Stonefish, let me come to you and pick up the line of questioning that I was starting to discuss with Mr. Bresnik. Here we've got these companies, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Tesla, hugely invested in China and hugely dependent on China. And it would be one thing if they were, run-of-the-mill, no-name companies, but Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, these are arguably, each of those three are monopoly-size companies that have significant control of vast sections of our consumer economy. So I guess my question is, how concerned should we be that 80% of Apple's suppliers have a base in China, 95% of Apple's key consumer products are manufactured in China, a third of Amazon's suppliers are in China, 10% of Microsoft's China-based research lab produces, or I should say Microsoft's China-based research lab produces 10% of the company's research output. Those are massive numbers. Should we be concerned about this, or is this not relevant? Are we panicking unnecessarily?
Thank you for bringing these issues up. I think this is incredibly important. And I think there's this perception in DC that, everyone's talking about China, we're talking about it too much. I don't think we're talking about this nearly enough. I am really appreciative that you brought up the potential for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan and a war with Taiwan. It's our very strong belief that the businesses you mentioned have constantly underpriced the risk of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, and they've long underpriced the risk of their very heavy China exposure. There's massive national security implications of the figures that you just described. And I think US government agencies need to be really aware of the various different interests and influences inside these corporations. We're in an era of shareholder capitalism, and if it's in Apple's best financial interest to double down on China, where does that leave us, and where does it leave Apple consumers? I was using an Apple laptop right here, but also the US government. And I think this is especially the case with Microsoft and the US government's relationship with Microsoft, and understanding that the depth of Microsoft's entanglement with China and with the Chinese Communist Party poses very real supply chain and security risks, and these are things that big US companies absolutely need to disclose.
You say that you think that these companies, there's a real risk that they underrate the significance of a potential Chinese invasion and takeover of Taiwan. Just elaborate on that, and what do you think what are some of the scenarios there that we should be prepared for?
So 3 different potential scenarios. One is business as usual, tensions abate. Second is a limited Chinese invasion of Taiwan, perhaps a la what Russia did in Ukraine in 2014, seize a few of the outlying islands, assassinate Taiwanese politicians, seize a little bit of territory and stop, or a full-scale Chinese invasion of Taiwan, which could potentially lead to World War III. In the latter 2 scenarios, this would have massive upheavals for not only the global order, but US businesses and their interests in China, especially in the third scenario, where the Taiwanese semiconductor market gets knocked offline potentially, could drastically transform these companies and their share prices. And if this does happen, we expect a lot of companies will expect the US government to bail them out or to support them, when at this time, they're way too exposed to China for US national interests.
While the chairman gets ready to ask his questions, let me just ask you on that. On the scenario where the Taiwanese semiconductor production market gets completely knocked offline, which is a very real possibility in the scenario of a successful invasion of Taiwan, what would that look like for the United States? Just walk us through the potential ramifications there.
Initially, it would be devastating. What usually happens in instances like this, with the caveat that these things are very unpredictable, is that devastating weeks, months, and then people come up with alternatives. It's unclear what that will be, but US ingenuity and brilliance would allow for alternate supply chains and alternate possibilities. And so it wouldn't be a catastrophic end to the technological age, but it would have very major implications. And the companies that today are making the right de-risking choices and are making the right choices of moving out of China will be in much better shape if China does invade Taiwan.